Hey everyone, this is Albertino here again from Cornerstone Laser, back again with episode 3 of Lasers for Beginners, and today we're going to look at how to set the height of your laser really simply and easily and consistently every time. So as you guys might be aware, laser diodes need to be focused to a lens. The lens is typically connected with a threaded connection right at the bottom of the laser unit over here, and this has typically got a grip on it, and you can screw it in or out depending on how to focus your laser and get that really dialed in. And one of the reasons that you really need to make sure that you focus your laser to get the smallest dot possible is firstly, like everyone knows, if you wanted to use a magnifying glass to fry an ant or set something alight, you really need to focus the beams to the smallest point so that you can get the intensity of the heat at a maximum point, so that you can get the maximum heat out of that. And secondly, for resolution, so the smaller the laser dot is, the higher the resolution is going to be, or the better the quality of your engraving or cutting is going to be, because it's so intense. Now, you don't really want to be fiddling with this all the time. Every time you put in a workpiece, you really want to get a method to really do that quickly and simply. Now, some of the laser diode units actually come with a little bit at the back here that you can fold in, and it unfolds and gives you the exact right height, and then you fold it back for your workpiece. Now, typically you really want to do that, or you have to do it every time you put in a different thickness workpiece. So if you wanted to engrave just on something that is really flat against the baseboard, then you would have set it at a certain height. I've got an example of a workpiece here, and then you'd have to reset that height again. Now, this is, well, in this particular unit, which is a Negi Master 2, it's got this glass bit in the front here, which makes it really difficult to set this consistently. Other units have a shroud, which actually fits right up to the bottom of the workpiece. I'm not a really big fan of that because it traps a lot of the smoke underneath that and can actually condense in your lens and really damage your laser. I prefer to have a nice big gap between my workpiece and the laser unit itself, and then I'm absolutely sure that all of the smoke can actually be taken away while it's doing the engraving. Now, I've already set this previously, so I'm not going to fiddle with the threaded portion of it, but if you had to do this for the first time, in this particular case, if you didn't get good access to the threaded connection over there, you could take off this red lens. You'd only have to do this once really, and then you get it consistently every time. So now on this particular laser, it's got a little bolt at the back end over here, which you loosen with an Allen key. So I'm just going to shift this up and down just to show you how it looks. And there's I've shared an image of a lens that needs to be focused correctly. You'll find this probably in the literature of setting up your laser for the first time anyway. But as you can see, as I move this down closer to the workpiece, you can see the dot gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the same way, if I continue moving it down, it will move in the opposite direction. The dot will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so really what you want is the smallest possible dot that you can get. Now, this might be a little bit of an iterative process, but effectively what you would do for the first time is get it to the right height that you would actually want the piece to be. So determine what height that would be. And for me, I've actually 3D printed small little units like this. And you can see I've written a 0 on this one. I had access to a 3D printer at the time, and I think this one I've made 20 millimeters high. So I've set it that I can put the spacer unit between my workpiece and this little lens, and I know that that's the right height every time. And then I tighten the bolt, and then I know it's consistent. So the first time that you do this, get something that's really consistent. Now, if you don't have access to a 3D printer like I did for this particular unit, you can get something that has a consistent thickness, something like a little block of wood, something maybe like a USB case. It could be something that you cut to the right thickness, but just get something that's consistent, and that's going to give you the right height every single time. Set it to the height that you want, or that for the piece that you're going to use to set your height consistently, and then you basically set your use your threaded lens section to get it to the smallest possible dot that you can get. And you might be able to see that hopefully that's the smallest dot. I've got really good results with this, so I'm not going to fiddle with that at the moment. That's effectively what you do. And then every single time that you put a new workpiece into your laser, you use the same thickness spacer, and you put it on top of your workpiece between that and the laser, and off you go, and you never have to set it again. What's important to note is that you might be able to see that, but this particular laser has got a lip between this lens and the rest of the heatsink. So you need to make sure that you put the spacer in the same place every single time. So if you set it initially underneath the lens component here, in future don't put it under there because it's going to mess with your height. Alright, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, if you're going to just be engraving, like I do, the majority of my work is actually engraving, because this particular laser is not powerful enough to cut very thick sections of wood. But in the event that you want to cut pieces of wood, for example, 3mm disc, for instance, like this is an example of a 3mm disc, you would want to maybe go one step further and say that you really want the point of the laser to be at its maximum intensity in the center of your workpiece that you're going to be cutting. So this is a 3mm piece of wood, and I really want to, if I wanted to cut this particular unit, I want to set the laser so that it's 1.5 millimeters down. And so I've also created other units where I've made it 1.5 millimeters smaller. So this one has got a 3 on it, which means it's designed for a 3mm piece of wood. And what it effectively does is when I use this to space it, I know that I'm going to be cutting the 3mm piece of wood, and that the highest intensity is actually going to be in the center. What it means, if you don't do that, is that the highest intensity is at the top surface as you were engraving, but by the time it gets 3mm down to the bottom, it's lost a lot of its intensity, and then it really struggles to cut through the last bit. And I've done a couple of iterations of these. I was pretty optimistic, to be honest, when I did it. This one's a 4mm, so that's for 4mm thickness of material, and it's 2mm shorter than the original one, which means that the center would obviously be 2mm down. And this one is a 6mm, 6mm thick, so the highest intensity would be 3mm down. So I don't really use these too often. As I said, I really struggle to cut through anything that's thicker than 3mm, but if you understand the concept, then you get really consistent results every single time. Now, every time you cut, you really want to make sure that you run through a checklist, and you want to make sure that firstly you get the height setting correct based on your workpiece, that you get the coordination system correct, so you're making sure that you're cutting or engraving in the right place in relation to the workpiece, and thirdly is your settings. So you want to make sure that you've got the right speed, power and intensity. And I'll be covering that in separate videos, but hopefully this was helpful, and if it was, I'd appreciate if you would like and subscribe. That will help me to make more of these videos in future. Thank you.